Messerschmitt Me-262 was the first operational jet fighter in the world. This German wonder weapon had a potential to turn the tide of the war, but it came too late to make a decisive impact. Here is 5 interesting facts about this airplane which you might not know. Number 1. Hitler's order to convert it to a fighter-bomber wasn't the main cause for the delay. The usual narrative, repeated many times, is that when Me-262 was first presented to Hitler on 26 November 1943, he demanded that the jet should be converted to a fighter-bomber so it could be used to attack Allied forces attempting an invasion of France. Until that moment, nobody had really considered that option. Everybody saw it as a pure fighter which could effectively stop heavy Allied bombing of Germany. Serious production was supposed to commence already in December of 1943, but the Hitler's order delayed the whole project for at least 6 months, and the first bomb trials only began in May 1944. Precious time was lost and Germany missed an opportunity to regain aerial superiority. This story is supported by memoirs of people such as the famous fighter ace Adolf Galland and Albert Speer, the Minister of Armament and War Production. They and most other people were able to see that number 1 priority for Germany should have been dealing with Allied bombing raids. But was that really the main reason? For one thing, the airplane had already been considered in a fighter-bomber version long before November 1943. Already in February that year, a notice was given to aircraft industry that all future fighters should be developed as fighter bombers as well. First plans for such a version of Me-262 appeared in March 1943. In September 1943, Willy Messerschmitt and his team proposed several variants: a fighter, a reconnaissance airplane, a Schnellbomber, meaning fast bomber, an interceptor, and a training version. And how difficult was it really to modify a fighter so it could carry bombs? It was a matter of fixing some pylons, adding some wiring, and a few cockpit switches. This was a simple and well-tested technology. Most World War II fighters could also carry bombs, and this was nothing new. When the bomber variant, designated Me-262A2A, eventually appeared, it was very similar to the fighter variant, except that it had bomb racks and only 2 cannons instead of 4. There was no special bomb sight or other equipment. While there is no doubt that Hitler's order and insistence on Me-262 as a fighter bomber caused some delay and misuse of assets, the main reason for the delay was in fact the airplane itself, and even more precisely, the engines. This was a very new and untested technology, and it remained the main weakness of Me-262 throughout its operational use. Chris from Military Aviation History made an excellent video explaining this topic in more detail, and I recommend that you watch it if you want to know more. Number 2. Its first victim was a Mosquito on a recon mission. On 26 July 1944, an RAF de Havilland Mosquito was flown by Flight Lieutenant Albert Wall on a long-range reconnaissance mission over Bavaria, Germany. The airplane was flying on 30,000 feet at over 400 miles per hour. It was almost untouchable for German fighters. But then, the navigator, pilot officer Albert Lobben, noticed a strange airplane approaching them from the rear. It seemed to have no propellers. The Mosquito pilot pushed the throttles to the maximum and began with evasive action. This mysterious plane made 3 passes, but Flight Lieutenant Wall was able to evade fire every time. The Messerschmitt was flown by Lieutenant Alfred Schreiber. He eventually claimed to have shot down the enemy airplane. However, the Mosquito wasn't in fact shot down, as it managed to land at Fermo Air Base in Italy. The outer hatch had blown off, either by gunfire or by a tight maneuver. The crew heard two bangs and first wanted to bail out, but then decided to stay with the aircraft. The airplane was initially unresponsive, but then Wall was able to hide in some clouds and escape. Although this wasn't the proper kill, it still demonstrated that Me-262 was able to intercept any Allied aircraft. Schreiber claimed another RAF recon aircraft on 2 August, a Spitfire. This one is also not confirmed by Allied records. The first confirmed kill for the Me-262 was scored by Feldwebel Joachim Weber, who shot down a Mosquito from 540 Reconnaissance Squadron on 8 August. The crew, Flight Lieutenant Matthewsman and Flight Sergeant Stopford, were killed. This was the first confirmed kill for the Me-262. In this reenactment, we used the fighter-bomber version of the Mosquito instead of Photo Recon, since this one is the only one available in current flight simulators. Number 3. Its last victim was a Soviet fighter. Me-262 was used almost exclusively in the West. But in the final days of World War II, the Western and the Eastern Front were rapidly approaching. Some of the final claims made by German jet pilots were Soviet aircraft. As Germans were desperately trying to stop the Soviet advance, even the jet fighters were now committed to strafing Soviet ground forces. They achieved some success but also suffered significant losses, mostly due to ground fire. One of the remaining units, Jagdgeschwader 7, managed to keep some of its Me-262s operational until the last hours of the war. On 8th of May, around 4 p.m., Oberleutnant Fritz Stehle took off with his wingman from an airfield northwest of Prague and attacked the formation of Soviet aircraft. He claimed a Yak-9, although this was more likely a P-39 era Cobra, since Soviet records confirmed the loss of 2 such fighters on that date. This might have been the last air victory claimed by the Luftwaffe in World War II. Number 4. Only a small percentage of produced airframes was used in combat. Despite enormous difficulties caused by Allied bombing, materiel shortage and other factors, Germans still managed to produce a significant number of Me-262 airframes. The exact number varies from source to source, but it is estimated to be around 1,500. This was matched with more than sufficient number of Junkers Jumo 004 engines which powered it. However, no more than 500 of them were ever fully assembled. And out of those, no more than 250 to 300 were used in combat. There are several factors which caused this situation. Many airframes were destroyed in aerial bombing before they could be completed. Many were strafed on the ground by fighter bombers. But probably the biggest problem was pilot training. Me-262 demanded an experienced pilot. Two-seat trainers existed, but not many were built. Fuel shortage and a lack of uncontested airspace made it very hard to train new pilots. All this and more is why the history of this remarkable aircraft can be summed up with the saying, too little, too late. Number 5. It was used in operational service after the end of World War II. You almost certainly know that captured examples of Me-262 were flown by Allied countries for testing purposes after the war. But did you know that one country used the Me-262 in an operational unit? It wasn't actually called Me-262, but rather Avia S-92, and the country which built and used this type was Czechoslovakia. During World War II, Germany used facilities of aircraft manufacturer Avia in occupied Czechoslovakia to produce parts for the Me-262, and a full production was planned there. The end of war interrupted such plans, but then Czechoslovakian Air Force decided to launch the production for their own purposes. Avia had at its disposal complete blueprints, technical manuals, a large stock of parts, and most importantly, the production jigs and tooling. Avia's engine repair division was responsible for manufacture of Jumo 004 engines. The production was mostly manual, and the completed S-92 were almost identical to German Me-262. Only 12 of them were built, which included 9 single-seaters and 3 two-seat trainers. They first entered operational service in June 1946. Single-seaters were retired in 1950, while the trainers continued to be used until 1951. 2 other countries were interested in purchasing this type from Czechoslovakia. The first was Yugoslavia, which showed interest in 1947. One pilot was supposedly trained on this type, but an order was never placed. And the country only received its first jet fighter in 1953 in the shape of American F-84 Thunderjet. The other country was Israel, which showed interest for S-92 in 1948 or 49. Egyptian intelligence even reported that a jet fighter had crashed in one of Israeli bases, and also that one of Egyptian transport planes was harassed by an Me-262. Those reports were false because Israel never purchased any of those airplanes, and the first jet this country operated was the British Meteor. In late 1940s, the Me-262 was rapidly aging, and it was replaced with more advanced Soviet jets. While it could be said that it was more trouble than it was worth to Czechoslovakia, this represents a very interesting end of the story for this fascinating aircraft. If you liked the video, be sure to press the like button. That is a huge help to the channel. If you want to help even more, join our Patreon supporters to get exclusive content, early access, and more. If you want to buy any of the books used as sources for this video on Amazon, use our links. You will pay the same price, but your favorite channel will get a small percentage. Thank you and keep watching Showtime 112.